Welcome back to the Guildford.Games interview sessions. We are with Supermassive Games. I've been joined by Dan and Hattie. Hey guys, how you doing?
Hello.
Hello.
I will hand over to you to expertly tell us who you are and what you do for Supermassive. You can decide who goes first. It's always
Go on,
fun.
Hattie.
Thank you. Well, I'm Hortense Thorp, aka Hattie, and I'm a game producer at Supermassive Games.
Cool. Dan?
And I'm Dawes, and I'm a narrative designer.
Cool. We're getting a really nice mix today of you Supermassive guys. Okay, so let's start with Hattie. I'll let you go first. How did you get into the games industry?
Well, for me, it was a lot to do with hassling the recruitment team on LinkedIn, and trying to get my foot in the door to have a meeting with someone. I'd applied for jobs on jobs that were available and got rejected, but I just didn't let it go.
Good.
And I really asked, saying I was really keen and passionate about working for Supermassive, and I would love to be able to speak to someone about my skills. And eventually I managed to get an appointment, and that led on to an interview, which was really amazing.
Tenacity is my favourite thing.
Yes, you have to be very confident.
You really
and
do.
Not let it go.
Yeah, good. I'm pleased you didn't. You didn't. Dan?
Well, mine's a bit long-winded, sorry.
Let's go.
Strap in. I definitely didn't start in the gaming industry. I played a lot of games when I was a kid and loved that, and I still play games now, obviously, because I'm just a big kid. That's why we're all here.
Yeah.
So I was a teacher for about 3 years, and then I worked in the theatre industry as an actor initially for about 5 years, and then moved into directing and writing. A game developer came to see a play that I'd written and spoke to me on Twitter afterwards and said, "Hey, I think your play would make a really cool video game." I went, "I think you're mad," but I went for a meeting and it didn't end up happening, unfortunately. It got cancelled mainly because of COVID and other funding stuff, but it got me involved in the gaming industry in a sort of soft way. I also did some work for a company over in the US as well, sort of some narrative stuff for them and writing a few little stories. And so I got a bit, involved through theatre, really. And then as a result of that, I spoke to the guy who'd picked up this play of mine and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about maybe shifting careers from theatre into gaming full time. Would I be kind of laughed out the room if I had an interview?" And he went, No, apply, you might as well, go for it. And applied for Supermassive because it was available. I like the games that Supermassive made, and now I'm here.
Wow. That's right. I mean, what's interesting is you've both come from kind of crossover spaces, essentially, into video games. And it came up in an earlier interview that we're really seeing that space between games and movies be completely closed up. It just seems to be one kind of overarching narrative. That's what we've got.
Especially with Supermassive Games, I think their games are very cinematic. That is, I think, the what makes our games so great.
I was going to stop you and say your games, Hattie. They're your games. They're not their games. They're your games. But you did it. That's cool. Good.
Yes, and BAFTA award-winning kind of, and that's why it's so important to have people from that industry. My industries where I came from was completely different and not even artistic or cinematic or anything like that, but I have a passion for games, and at the same time I have skills that I could sell, so really transferable skills that I'd learned over a 20 years plus kind of career, where I'd done project management, I'd done a lot of third-party relationships management and procurement, so it's very sort of corporate type of roles, but somehow all of that felt like it culminated into a point in my life where I felt ready to sell my skills, to be able to finally do something that I was passionate about in an industry where I'm so in awe of everything that we create, and all the talent that are in this company and other game industry companies. And it's just really amazing to be able to put all that together and sell it and then finally get the job that you always dreamt of. So I feel very lucky to be here.
It's just so wonderful to hear that, just different stories, that there are other ways, that you don't have to go to university and study game development in order to end up within, the hallowed halls of a place like Supermassive. It's really, really cool. So, I mean, it's early doors. And it's okay if we talk about other things, but is there a moment that you've had so far at Supermassive within your careers, within the team, that's made you super proud?
Well, actually, I go back to interview level, weirdly. I know that's maybe not quite the answer you wanted.
It's fine.
At the interview stage, I said, what's the day-to-day look like? And, I was a creative in the theatre industry, but a lot of my job was also producing. It was applying for funding, and there was lots of stuff you get bogged down in, actually, when you're working as a freelancer, which is what I was doing. And I was told, well, some days you'll come in, there's a bit of character development, sometimes you'll be writing a bit of script, and sometimes you have meetings about, the story arc. And I thought, oh, this sounds entirely creative. And actually 95% of my job that I did before that as a freelancer was just trying to find that work generation. And the idea of going into work and just being creative 9 to 5 was enormously appealing. And that's how it's transpired. And I love every minute.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. I love that. Because, that's those, when you are running everything, wearing lots of hats and doing it all yourself to some extent, as a creative, getting bogged down in those details can just kill the vibe. Can't do anything today because I spent too much time looking at figures, and now I can't go back to what I was wanting to do before. So
exactly.
it must be lush to come in and just be like, no, I'm just creating today. Yeah. I'm just gonna throw things out into the world. Oh, I love that.
That's brilliant. I think for me it was, it's almost indescribable how I felt on the day of the interview and the second interview when I came out to the office to have a face-to-face one, which was my first face-to-face interview in a long time, given all the COVID stuff. But I almost felt as exhilarated as on my wedding day. It was I'm not kidding. It was just, I could not even drive myself home because I was so excited. I felt like I could go into an accident or something. I had to sort of calm down.
Your partner's going to see this interview.
No, I know. I've told him, it was because I was so happy, and he knows.
I told him, I love it.
We're both passionate about gaming anyway, so he knows how important this is. Because for me, it was I think it's got to do with it felt like the start of a new life, which is also, what you do when you're getting married. And I just felt, oh my God, this is so amazing, that I was shaking in excitement. So yeah, it was a really cool day.
I think I
felt really proud. I felt really, really proud.
That's wonderful
to have managed to win my way into this industry.
I love it. I love it. That's really cool. So what would you say makes Supermassive such a special place to work that's keeping you guys so engaged to come in every day?
For me, definitely is the level of trust that you find here that I haven't experienced before. It's once you've been vetted and interviewed and you've got the job, people just know and assume that you'll just do everything you can to do a good job, and that you come in with great skills. And they're just really letting you express that and do your job in any way that you can, and bring in all your skills and all your talent, I think, as much as possible. And a bit linked to what you were saying earlier about just focusing on the creative element and the useful stuff. It feels like we're doing all of that 100% of our time, and not worry about politics. Or I've come from a really corporate background where there's a lot to do with governance and all the boring stuff.
But actually allowed to speak to who, and
exactly,
the language that you use.
Here, it's so relaxing to have both a manager and colleagues who just assume you'll be your best. And don't even worry about any of that, and you just crack on, you go in meeting, you interact with people, and it feels like you get productive very quickly. I came here just a month ago, and I'm already delivering projects. I'm already, feeling of value, very early on, even though I have to learn so much about this industry. So.
But that empowerment is partially brought by you, by your ability to see a room full of people and think, no, I can do it. I can go and talk. I can go and talk to them. I've never met them, but it's fine. I can do it. That is, you're almost manifesting that kind of vibe. That's cool.
Yeah,
Dan, what would you say?
Well, I completely echo that. Yeah, completely. Very trusting, and I feel very looked after as well. Actually, especially after, I said, being a freelance for such a long time and having to do it all yourself. You're sitting in a room with people that care about what you're trying to do, and also care about you as an individual as well.
Yeah, and I guess it's slightly different potentially to other creative situations in that it's a little bit more collaborative, that something said in a meeting that you hadn't even considered could then end up being a big part of what you go and work on that afternoon. It is all about coming into the office or remotely and having those interactions that then kind of lead us down our game dev path.
Yeah, and that's great because, before this, it was all going on in my own head, and I would collaborate with designers and different sorts of people on projects. But when you're sort of wearing all the hats, as you said, it's difficult to do that. So, I mean, really, this office is just a manifestation of my own imagination.
Yeah, it's good.
It's facets of my creative
I'm
mind.
pleased to be here.
Great. It's quite a weird experience having all these people that make these amazing contributions that beforehand you having to do yourself.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But what I also loved being here is that after all the lockdown experiences that we've had, here we're working from home very rarely, and so I just really enjoy being here with people because I'm getting so much energy out of that, and also realizing that all the people surrounding me now are very like-minded. You know, there's so many things that we have in common, and to not be ashamed of your gaming addiction or being able to discover like new games all the time, or talk about even like other things that we've already created a choir or like a singing group, and we've got lots of things happening that are really cool in the day-to-day sort of running of the office. And so it's good to bump into people that you feel very connected to already without very little interactions. You often feel that you know them really deeply because we have so many things in common.
Yeah.
So
I have to say, I mean, Supermassive, I only started visiting the studio properly for interviews and whatnot a couple of years ago, within my work with Liquid Crimson. But from the very first time I stepped into the studio, I felt like I was a part of that team. They really looked after me. I felt like I was valued and meant to be there. And now I would say, I think Supermassive probably the team that I spend the most time with outside of Liquid Crimson, of course. And I never feel on the outside of it. We're all kind of together. It's lovely. You're so lucky to work with these guys. They're so great. So great. You are so great as you are now. All part of Supermassive.
What's it?
high five.
Yes. Okay, let's jump to, even in the time you've been playing games as opposed to the time that you've been in the industry, what have you seen change within the games industry? The kind of most dramatic things, and where could that end up taking us?
I think for me, it's I'm always amazed how much quality comes out and how it really, every time there's a new game, there's like a whole new level of stuff coming out. I'm really impressed with. Sometimes it's the quality, like technically, you obviously we know how the games are made and what it takes to make them, and you realize, oh my gosh, how much coding this game has gone through, and like the technicality of it, like how have they even managed to create a game like this, or just the creative aspect, like the animations, the environments are getting better and better, and it feels like films now, as you said earlier. It's very much you're taken into a whole film and the whole story, and it lasts for much longer than an actual film, and you're days into this environment, or you're taken like into a story with people. You feel like you're part of that story, and I think I'm really excited to see what next are they going to do.
Yeah, and that element, with the movie interaction into everything, or integration into everything, the fact that you can be more of a passive consumer of video games. That when I was growing up playing games, I can't imagine any member of my family would have wanted to come in and watch me repeatedly lock Lara Croft's butler in the freezer, but maybe they would. But now watching a video game is so much more kind of engaging. Accessible, absolutely. And you can sit and enjoy a story even if you're not the one making those decisions. It can still be the quality of the graphics, and not that that's always important, but that just means that it's so easy to get drawn in even if you're not a player or have never considered yourself to be a player.
I think it's the enormous growth. You look where games were 25 years ago when I was a kid and stuff, and the difference now is just huge. And I think that's because as an industry, there's this acceptance that there must be a continual stride towards innovation. And it's relentless. And I don't know any other industry like it.
You're right.
Actually. And okay, there are businesses that need to make money, but certainly at Supermassive, the approach that I'm seeing is money is the byproduct of a successful game, not the other way around. It's not just about that, it's about creating quality, and from that comes a success. And I see that in most industries, certainly at Supermassive, and that helps that drive towards innovation.
Yeah, absolutely. I think another interesting point, although not entirely connected, but that innovation, that constantly changing landscape that developers have to exist within, I'm sure, and I would like to look into it further, that it's why we skew so high having members of the games industry with neurodiversities, because it's a constant, like, okay, what's next? I've got my base level passion.
That's a very good
now
point.
let's keep adding things to it. Where can I go? Because it's always changing. So it kind of fosters a home for us neurodiverse folks.
Yeah,
probably.
It's very cool. It's very cool.
And you have the diversity of characters as well, in terms of like the types of personalities and skills that go into it. So you'll have the very perfectionists, that are going to put everything they can and all their time into the quality of the picture or the story, and then you also have those a bit more like me who are like, okay, let's get it done by the time that we need it. Let's publish it on time, etc. And I'm going to be pushing on the resources and how we plan and everything and how we perform. So even though I'm not like so creative, I'm not going to make the game look any better or feel any better. I'm going to make sure it gets there on time, and or that everyone feels that they're contributing even more value, and that their time spent delivering the game actually is more productive, etc., etc. So I think we all have something to contribute, and there's this constant wanting to get better and better and better, and this is very typical of this industry.
Absolutely.
I think.
I think what we're seeing with that growth that we've mentioned as well is as Guildford, just as an example, gets more airtime, people become more aware that, okay, all of this is happening within the one place. The diversity that you mentioned of character, we're getting that diversity of story where we're managing to attract people to make games with us that bring something that no one else on that team has, a history, a background, a childhood, whatever, that can add something to that story that may never have been considered. I'm honestly so excited as the industry keeps growing. We're seeing more and more of these fascinating stories that we may not have picked up on before.
And so everyone can really see something of themselves in the games, and it becomes a lot more mainstream because it's way more accessible that way.
We're going to be the #1 media before long. I'm telling you, it's got to happen. So many people are gamers.
I think somehow we are.
Are we there?
It smashed both music and film combined.
I thought we were still behind music.
No,
I
way
think we
ahead.
are. Yes, we got there.
We did it. All we had to do was an interview, and it happened. Oh, that's great.
Congratulations.
There you go.
Thanks, guys. I've been working really hard. Okay, so as you two are testament to, the Supermassive team is growing considerably at the moment. What does Supermassive do? What do you try and do? What do your teams do to continue to feel connected? Whether you're long distance, whether you're in 2 different studios, whether you're across the hall, how are you kind of keeping that all-important connection and communication up?
I think it's pretty just similar to the point we just made, really, which is this mantra towards making successful games, making innovative games, making creative games that bring people together, and everyone's got a role within that. So no matter, for example, there's somebody on the team that I'm working with at the moment who's almost entirely remote, who comes in maybe once every couple of months for a few days, but we live in remarkable times where we can just sort of tap in and do a quick call, and that's absolutely fine. Even within a meeting where you might have a hybrid system with some people in the room, some people remote, it doesn't really matter anymore. As you say, it's nice being in the office, especially after a couple of years of varying lockdowns and things. But it doesn't matter too much. And there's if you've already got that thing in your heart where you're trying to make the best game possible, it doesn't really matter.
Well, that almost makes the connection,
exactly, because you bridge those gaps.
Yeah. Awesome. What would you say, Hattie?
I would say it's a question of caring for each other as well. A little bit like it might feel or sound gimmicky, but I think that connection is definitely there, and I've already experienced it or seen it around me here in the month at Supermassive, that people really deeply care about each other, and I think as a result, those hybrid sort of meetings and things like that probably feel a lot more productive, and people feel like they really belong to a team.
Yeah. I mean, having spoken to some of the younger members of your team today, they, what they're so excited about is that they're listened to, that they can come into a team where they're completely fresh and they, just stepped out of uni, and yet their voice is just as important around that table as everyone else's. Yeah. Very, very important. Okay, so if there's people out there listening to our wonderful conversation this afternoon, having just found out that games are the #1 media, great. What advice would you give them when it comes to getting into the games industry, but considering, crossover, that you guys have come from different spaces and are now with us? Dan, do you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I didn't come from the gaming industry at all. I never would have thought when I was growing up that gaming would be something I'd be involved in. Didn't know how to do that, and it was a bit of a sort of curveball way of getting into it. I think just confidence. A little bit what you said earlier on, Hattie, tenacity as well. If it's something you really want to do, keep going for it.
Something my mum's always said, if you really want it, it will happen. If
but it's
you
kind
really
of true, right?
Want it will happen.
You have to kind of manifest it, I suppose. Then you can go for your interview and they'll be like, oh, you're the guy that manifested a couple of weeks ago.
Wait,
right? Great. Oh, yeah, cool.
We heard you were coming.
Okay. Glad you're here through telepathy. Tenacity, go for it, and believe that you deserve to be here, I think.
Yeah. And believe that you have something completely valuable to bring to whichever studio you're kind of aiming for as well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember a little bit of what my mentor was saying that really helped me get here. For me, it was kind of like a 9-month process to land this job. And I think it really started with having clarity about what you're good at. So be confident about your skill, but know them. So some people don't realize how good they are at certain things. So it could be one thing, could be several things. But it's really what you're unique and really good or passionate about, or want to know more about. If you're like quite young and you're coming out of uni, the things that you're passionate about are the things that you're going to become really great about. And therefore, if you're clear about that, when you go to bed and you think, okay, what would it look like if I was landing this job? What would I be doing? And then the next day, the brain will have the power to have made those connections overnight. And then all of a sudden, you'll come up with ideas. You'll find things that will help you eventually make your way and create that path for you. And so for me, it was about being clear about the skills that I could brag about in my CV, doing an interview, or on my LinkedIn profile. So using all the tools and all the channels that you've got at your disposal at the moment. And then just be consistent with those. So just very small messages, clarity over your skills and what you can bring, and then just bring that back and repeat that over. And it's a mantra that you keep going about, and then eventually the connections will happen. And the stars will align in your life. And that's what happened with me. I got rejected, but I didn't let it go.
You kept going.
And I kept going, and I kept saying the same thing. I'm passionate, I've got skills, I can make it. And I did. And so that's proof that, don't be disheartened by a setback where you don't get the first application approval. It happens to everybody.
Absolutely.
Just keep going, and your passion will make it happen.
And that's it. Your passion in the situations where you're potentially going for. I mean, I certainly did at EA. Repeat interviews, different role every time, trying to find, because studios like Supermassive, like EA, that are really big on culture as well and making sure that people fit. It can be quite disheartening to go through that. But going through it, knowing that you're making an impression every time, and if you're getting invited back to be interviewed again, then okay, this is going well. But also, what you said about identifying what your skills are and running with them. Don't get disheartened if those skills are not the skills that you want, right? That, okay, this is what I have right now. Working with those and being very honest about what they are and where they can fit in video games, absolutely. But once you get your foot in the door, you've got the opportunity to go, actually, I came in here as a designer, but I really love the look of coding. How would you help me? Could someone lend me a lunch break to just take me through, blah, blah, blah. And you could end up moving into other spaces within games. So yeah, I think that's really, really useful advice.
And I think what's also important to know is that you don't have to have very clearly gaming kind of skills to be able to get into the industry. Because we're recruiting talent all the time. We're really it's a booming industry, and a company needs all kinds of people and skills to run itself. And so there's bound to be one thing, the one thing that you're good at that we're going to need eventually.
Exactly.
And so that's really what helped me, and what other people here at Supermassive are saying. You know, I didn't know I could be, you know, in a game, but your name is on it just because you're helping the process and the process of creation. Be it, you know, the HR team or the finance
team. And to have
team.
that knowledge of video games coming in, to have a knowledge of video game development as anyone within an administration team heading towards a video games company is an amazing space to be, certainly for HR, PR, all of that kind of stuff, to actually understand the industry. But yeah, there is room for anyone who's passionate and excited about what we're doing to come and join us, essentially. And just because someone's thinking that I'd never make it, it's not good enough. Of course you can. Like, give it a go. Like, at least try. At least try. I don't need my iPad for my last question. I don't know why I was opening it again. We land on the big question of the interview. I know we've had a few big hitters in this one, but favourite Guildford game?
Well, it would be too obvious to mention one of our award-winning
You're going to have to
Supermassive
say it.
games.
It's fine.
It's too obvious, but the camera needs it.
No. I want to promote other games as well, because
Supermassive games. Supermassive games.
I love VR, right? And I think one of the best VR experiences I've had was Supermassive, the Room VR. By Fireproof, I believe, Fireproof.Games.
They're up the road.
Exactly. Well, they're all here, right? It was one of the best experiences I had, and I love puzzles. I love escape rooms, and it was just like the quality of the environments. I felt transported. I felt really. I thought it was really, really cool. So obviously, I would have said all the
Okay. Don't worry, I'll
House
cover
of
your back.
Ashes,
It's
the Devil in Me, the Quarry, and
then there's all of these. But no, I get it. And I mean, even that first game, before they even got to VR, you were in that world from the second you opened it. I was playing on a rudimentary first-gen iPad, I think, and even then, it was like, I'm in. This is now all around me. Like, it's incredible, the immersive work that can be done with clever design, clever gameplay, and audio, I guess, is a pretty big and important part of it all. But yeah, incredible. Good choice. Dan?
Let me just get the Wikipedia page of
Supermassive
games out.
You can just sort out all of this.
Have you tried House of Ashes, maybe?
Well, yeah, I've heard of that, No, I genuinely think, I'll give you three, actually.
Okay.
But I think Until Dawn genuinely was incredibly groundbreaking.
Yeah.
So, yes, okay, we're biased, but that's got to be on there, I think. And that's why it won so many awards and was incredibly successful, because it was, something completely new. I also think No Man's Sky has a place in my heart as a game that's continuing expanding. But also its experimentation with procedural generation was just absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And it looks beautiful despite